We'll call this meeting to order. We're going to start with an invocation led by Commissioner Mike Stewart. If everyone please rise. We'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Please join me. Heavenly Father, we thank you again, Lord, for this opportunity to come and serve our county. Lord, just ask that you bless us here tonight. Bless my fellow commissioners, Lord, as we go forward with the business of the county, that you just give us wisdom. Grant us wisdom, God, to do what's right for this county, Father, for the long term. And I ask that you just bless each one that's here, and we ask these things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Commissioner, or Chairman. I'd like to pull item number 10 under consent agenda and pull that for discussion. Also, we're going to add the RTP grant application to the general business.
Okay. I'm adding an announcement for Keep Wakulla County Beautiful with Bruce Ashley during announcements. And are there any other changes from anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item 9 off the consent agenda, please.
Okay. Any additional changes?
Motion to approve with noted changes. Second.
All right. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Perfect. We'll now move on to our first public hearing of this evening. I have a script to follow, as we pointed out last week, so I'm going to try and make this a little smoother. This is the second of 2 required public hearings on the Wakulla County budget for fiscal year 2012-2013. If you wish to speak during the public hearing portion of this meeting, please step forward at the appropriate time. The proposed final aggregate millage rate for Wakulla County is 8.5 mils, which is 3.8% less than the aggregate rolled-back millage rate of 8.8354 mils. The proposed final budget for the Wakulla County is $42,431,535. Now the county administrator will read the millage rate into the public record.
The proposed Board of County Commissioners of Wakulla County final countywide millage rate is 8.5 mils. This is 3.8% less than the countywide rollback millage rate of 8.8354 mils. The proposed Board of County Commissioners of Wakulla County final budget is $42,431,535. This final budget incorporates the following changes to the tentative budget presented during the first public hearing: an increase of $24,029 to the Tourist Development Fund, an increase of $330,000 to the Fire MSBU Fund, a decrease of $16,000 to the Law Enforcement Education Fund, an increase of $100,000 to the Sheriff's Fine and Forfeiture Fund.
I'm opening up the floor for a motion to begin the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor of opening the public hearing?
Aye.
At this time, the individuals that have turned in a speaker card to the clerk are allowed to speak. Bob Danzy.
Only Bob Danzy. Hey, I'll just be quick. My name's Bob Danzy. I want to say this is probably your biggest challenge year in and year out is this budget, and I want to commend you for coming together. I suppose you probably had 5 different ideas, and maybe none of you got exactly what you wanted, but that's how government works. So I just want to thank y'all working together and doing what you had to do. There's a lot of tough decisions in this economic environment, and I appreciate you making them.
Thank you. Any further discussion from the Board of Commissioners before we move forward? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Florida statutes requires the board to address the millage rate before addressing the budget. The board must vote on the millage rate and the budget separately. I will now entertain the following motions, taking each one separately. First, approve the Board of County Commissioners fiscal year 2012-2013 final countywide millage rate of 8.5 mils.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Second, approve the Board of County Commissioners fiscal year 2012-2013 final countywide budget of $42,431,535 as presented by the Administrator of July 15th, on July 15th, 2012, and is amended through the agenda process today.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 That passes unanimously. Thank you all. All right, moving on to awards and presentations. Our first announcement this evening is going to be from Ms. Susie Chook on behalf of NAMI Wakulla.
Thank you. I'm Susie Took, President of NAMI Wakulla, and I just want to thank y'all for allowing us to be on the agenda tonight. As you know, NAMI Wakulla is an affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness and was established by a group of residents of Wakulla County within the past 2 years. And since that time, we're proud to say that we have operated a 24-hour helpline. We've established an office here in Crawfordville. We created 2 support groups, one for people diagnosed with mental illnesses and their other is for the families, friends, and people close to those diagnosed with mental illnesses. We offer a 12-week mental health course to family members of people diagnosed with mental illnesses. Each of those courses are free to the public, and we have trained facilitators that teach these courses, and we present programs free to the public each month. And our programs have featured experts and people affected by mental illness, and ranging from depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia disorder, as well as we've had open discussions on suicide and grief. This month our program is at 6:30 next Monday night, September the 24th, at the Crawfordville Women's Club, and we feature Mr. Bob Williamson, and he's the author of Miracle on Lucky Street, and he discusses his when he became homeless, and he is now a millionaire, and he discusses his challenges that he went through in his life to reach the stage that he's at. He's a very good speaker, and I hope that y'all all can come and hear him. As you may well know, NAMI Wakulla has joined various groups and organizations in our community to hold fundraisers to allow us to sponsor our education, support, and advocacy programs. With that in mind, I would like to ask you to recognize the week of October 7th through the 13th as Mental Illness Awareness Week, and I will read the proposed proclamation. A proclamation of the Wakulla County Board of County Commissioners declare October the 7th through the 13th as Mental Illness Awareness Week in Wakulla County. Whereas our serious mental illnesses such as major depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive disorder, severe anxiety disorders, borderline personality disorders, and post-traumatic stress disorders affect 1 in every 4 people annually. Whereas serious mental illnesses are more common than cancer and diabetes and heart disease, and are the number 1 reason for hospital admission nationwide. Whereas scientific research is producing tremendous breakthroughs in the understanding of mental illness, resulting in more effective treatment that allow people to reclaim full and productive lives. Whereas misunderstandings exist about many mental illnesses, and our social culture often wrongfully impose stigma on them. Now therefore resolve, we, the Board of County Commissioners of Wakulla County, Crawfordville, Florida, do hereby proclaim October the 7th through 13th, 2012, a Mental Illness Awareness Week in Wakulla County to increase public awareness of mental illness. In recognizing this Mental Illness Awareness Week, we will be inviting you and the public to join us on October the 13th, Saturday, in Azalea Park for our Walk for Heroes. This is our 2nd annual Walk for Heroes. We'll have a light breakfast, hot dogs, and the walk. We'll have entertainment and a speaker. And we do hope that you will join us for the Walk for Heroes. And thank you also for all the support that you county commissioners have given us in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's on our consent agenda, so we anticipate it passing shortly. Thank you. Up next this evening for announcements, Sheriff Crum would like to recognize Deputy Billy Metcalf.
Commissioners, actually we have 2 people recognized tonight, Mr. Billy Raker and Mr. Billy Metcalf, both of them Billies, both of them are native Wakullans. This with pleasure. I'd like both of them to come up, please, Billy and to Billy. That's easy. Can't mess up the... I might add that Billy Metcalf made his living out of the Bay, and it became apparent that it would be very difficult, so he changed things and got his law enforcement degree, and so he has now been working with the sheriff's office several years.
If you want to, it looks like there's a friend who might want to take some pictures if they want to come to the middle.
We are. We present them.
I'll come around, yeah.
Yeah, there's some people standing behind y'all with cameras.
Yeah. The first plaque I want to read to you is I actually learned Billy's name, Ruler Billy Raker, Jr. He is recognized for helping others beyond what is ordinary or expected, and for doing so without regards for attention or receiving in return, but rather because it was the right thing to do and needed to be done. The Life-Saving Act performed Wednesday, August 1st, 2012, where a 69-year-old Crawfordville woman life was saved on Sanders Cemetery Road in Sopchoppy, Florida, hereby qualifies Billy Raker is a true hero and is so recognized. Actually, Billy Metcalf has two, one from the Sheriff's Office and one from the American Safety and Health Institute. And Deputy Billy Metcalf is recognized for helping others beyond what is ordinary or expected, and for doing so without regards to attention or receiving return, but rather because it was the right thing to do and needed to be done. The Life-Saving Act performed on Wednesday, August 1st, 2012, where a 69-year-old Crawford woman's life was saved on Sanders Cemetery Road in Sopchoppy, Florida, hereby qualifies Deputy Metcalf as a true hero and is so recognized. Luke 10:27. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Deputy Metcalf is also recognized as with the Good Samaritan Award from the American Safety and Health Institute. In recognition of your extraordinary action responding to a medical emergency and providing life-saving and sustaining care, we proudly present Deputy Billy Metcalf with the American Safety and Health Institute Good Samaritan Award. And just a little bit about what happened was when the ladies became ill with the AEDs that our county tax dollars have bought, and it's something Friend Council created years ago. That's what created the Life-Saving Act. Thank you.
Before you step down, can you all pose right here for a picture? Our staff would like to get a picture. And if there's any of the family who wants to stand in the front here in the center with your cameras, feel free to come take pictures. We love to try and facilitate.
That was the portable defibrillators, Donnie, which we have. I think there's one in here.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you, Sheriff Crum, for recognizing them. It's good to know about the good things going on in our community. Thank you, gentlemen. Up next this evening of awards and presentations is an announcement on the 75th anniversary of the Wakulla Springs Lodge. Mr. Jeff True.
Commissioner Arts, will you read it first?
Make your comments first.
Good evening, commissioners and members of the community. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jeff True. I am the new general manager of Wakulla Springs Lodge, and I'd like to thank you for this wonderful honor. Of course, this year celebrates the 75th anniversary of Wakulla Springs Lodge. Ed Ball created the lodge to entertain and provide a serene place for his friends and community to relax and live it up. Well, he accomplished that and more. And being the 75th year, we felt it necessary to let the public know that Wakulla Springs Lodge and State Park are still here and going strong. 2011 was a rough time for the lodge, with the state announcing that the lodge was in danger of closing. We all know that the word of the press travels fast, and as far as people knew, the lodge was closed forever. Well, Cape Leisure Corporation won the bid to take over the concessions, and during the past year has worked on upgrades and new projects to make an even more enjoyable stay. But we still need to spread the word that the lodge is open. Next Tuesday, September 5th, we will be holding a press event. Newspapers, television, and radio have been called, and we will be inviting some special friends of the park to say a few words. We hope to spread the word fast and strong that we are here to stay. Afterwards, the lodge will be having a lunch buffet with some of our signature items that have been served through the years. I would like to informally invite our commissioners to this event to celebrate this wonderful occasion. We would also like to announce that we have brought back the all-you-can-eat shrimp platter on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And the gate fee will be ending at 5 p.m. every day starting October 1st. Thank you for supporting Wakulla Springs Lodge for so many years. The management and staff of Cape Leisure Corporation.
Thank you, Jeff. I also have a proclamation on the consent agenda, which I'd like to read. Wakulla County Proclamation declaring September 25th, 2012 as Wakulla Springs Lodge Day. Whereas September 25th, 2012 marks the 75th anniversary of the historic lodge at Edward Ball, Wakulla Springs State Park. And whereas financier Edward Ball purchased Wakulla Springs in 1934 and completed the lodge at Wakulla Springs in 1937. And whereas the lodge showcases an American style popularized during the 1920s and 30s, combining Mediterranean revival and Art Deco motifs designed by the Jacksonville-based architectural firm of Saxelby and Marsh. And whereas lodge construction provided needed employment for blacksmiths, millwrights, masons, stonecutters, painters, and artists during the Great Depression. And whereas the state of Florida acquired the land that included the lodge in 1986. And whereas the lodge continuously welcomes visitors from around the world and has hosted educational, cultural, and social events and has offered employment to residents since its opening in 1937. And whereas the lodge stands today largely as it did over 7 decades ago, providing a timeless glimpse into Florida's elegant past. And whereas the old-fashioned soda fountain features the world's longest known marble bar at over 70 feet and is composed of 8 face-matched pieces cut from 1 block of marble. And whereas the lodge claims the only known period Art Deco elevator still in use, with brass doors and interior walls of walnut. And whereas the lodge's staircase is an Art Deco masterpiece with massive marble landings and a wrought iron railing featuring limpkins and herons in the balustrade. And whereas the Friends of Wakulla Springs State Park obtained grants from the state of Florida's Division of Historic Resources to conserve the magnificent lobby ceiling icons, revealing geometric motifs interspersed with historic Florida scenes, 4 Spanish galleons, 4 tropical birds, and 2 portraits of unknown women, and to replace the lodge roof with original metal barrel tiles. And whereas the lodge at Wakulla Springs Park is a county treasure and comprises an integral part of the Wakulla Springs National Historic and Archaeologic District. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this historic building and its 75th anniversary and to the celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed that September 25th, 2012 be declared Wakulla Springs Lodge Day in Wakulla County.
Thank you. Thank you. And that'll be our consent agenda. I fully anticipated passing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
We're really excited. We appreciate all, again, Wakulla Springs is a treasure not only to Wakulla County, but the whole state and the world. Up next this evening, I'm going to ask Keep Wakulla County Beautiful Bruce Ashley to come up and give us an update on the coastal cleanup this past weekend.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for your service. I'm here on behalf of our Executive Director, Joanne Palmer, and our board members to give you an update on our this past weekend's efforts at coastal cleanup. I'm a little under the weather. 27th Annual Global Coastal Cleanup. Our participation in this event last weekend was part of over 9 million people in 52 countries working 22,000 miles of shoreline to clean those shorelines of litter and debris and trash. Here in our own county, we counted 130 volunteers working St. Mark's Refuge. We counted 440 volunteers at Woolly Park, and not all of our help came to the park. We did prepare 500 hot dogs, and all 500 were eaten. Those were donated generously by Richard Russell. We had kids with Avid, Wakulla, ROTC, Wakulla, TCC and FSU Kiteboarders Association, the Rickards High School National Honor Society came down and helped, Wakulla Dive Club, they worked the Wakulla River and cleaned trash off the bottom of the river, the Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Cub Scout Pack number 5 won the Weigh Your Butts contest and collected over 2 pounds of cigarette butts. Some of our generous sponsors were Walmart's Marpan donated 2 dumpsters that were completely filled. Waste Pro donated a 30-yard roll-off, which was completely filled. The St. Mark's Refuge donated $1,000 in an in-kind donation directly to Keep Wakulla Beautiful. Among the items found, we had one volunteer with his wife and children find an entire living room suite, sofa, sleeper sofa, and carpeting from a house. A large bike rack, one of those long that holds many bikes, was found in a marsh area way off Masha Sands Road. Lots of glass, lots of metal, lots of textiles, lots of items that would not biodegrade and would be just dangerous to have out there in our marshes and along our coastline. It was a wonderful event, well attended. I want to thank you all for your support and remind you that Keep Wakulla Beautiful has additional projects coming up. We're always looking for more participation. We've got a new logo, if you've seen our billboard, along 319 going northbound across from Azalea Park. We think it's a very sassy and classy logo. We refer you to look up at it when you go by. And we would like to present the County Commission for all your support this year, as in the past, with a nice little plaque from Keep Wakulla Beautiful for all that you did. And I know a number of people in the room were there Saturday, so thank you, too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce Ashley. I think the classy and sassy, that's adjectives we can always use for our community. Up last today, we're going to have Louis Cerna, I believe, or it's an announcement regarding preliminary flood hazard maps. I believe it's Louis going to talk to us. Do you want to come up to the podium?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Last Thursday, FEMA and the Northwest Florida Water Management District and their consultants. Sorry about that.
What have you done?
The more I mess with it, the worse it gets. Last Thursday, they met with county staff, and they also had a public meeting for the purpose of discussing their preliminary flood maps for Wakulla County. These maps are scheduled to go into effect approximately October of 2013. There was some very important information that came out of the meetings that will affect flood insurance, homeowners insurance rates for many throughout the county, and they'll also affect construction standards in certain areas. According to a representative who was there from the National Flood Insurance Program, if you have a mortgage and your flood designation is proposed for changes, your mortgage lender should notify you of your new insurance requirements under the new the new proposed maps. However, we are encouraging everyone to check the status of their property to see if their flood designation has changed. There's a possibility that you may not currently be in a 100-year flood zone, and under the new maps, you will be moved in a flood zone, and that will affect your flood insurance rates. And if you're not in a flood zone, you probably do not have flood insurance at this point. You can contact the county planning office at 926-3695 to have your flood insurance or your flood designation checked under the new map. And also you can contact the Water Management District. They have an excellent website that you can pull up a map and look at your property. You can find the old flood designation and then check what the new flood designation for your property is proposed to be. That website it's the Northwest Florida Water Management District. So the website is www.nwfwmd.state.fl.us. And under that website, you will click the Flood Information Portal tab, and you can look up your property. There's an important grandfather clause that they provided that we learned about at the meeting. If your base flood elevation has increased, it won't necessarily increase your flood insurance requirements or your building standards. However, you do have to constantly maintain flood insurance for your property, so that's a very important thing to check on. Another important thing to note is there's a 90-day appeal period. If you, for some reason, feel like your flood designation as proposed is wrong, you have approximately 90 days to appeal that. There are some very significant changes, particularly in the St. Marks area, and the county is currently considering working with St. Marks on challenging these new flood designations, and we are going to also check to see if we can get an extension on the 90-day appeals period. The meeting that we had with FEMA was somewhat delayed because Tropical Storm Debbie, so we think because of that, that meeting was originally scheduled for the day the tropical storm hit, so we lost approximately 90 days just because of the storm. So we're going to look into the feasibility of that with the city of St. Marks. I've given you some information from FEMA. They gave us quite a bit of information. I've got a whole folder full. We're going to be working to get this information on the county's website. As I indicated, we're also going to be working on looking at the feasibility of challenging some of the designations in certain areas. There's some very significant changes that will affect future development in certain areas. And we are also going to be working on looking at getting an extension for people to file appeals to their flood designation. But again, it's very important for everyone in the public to check to see if they're affected by the new flood maps. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Most of what was changed, Louis, was the coastal areas and the areas up the river. Like where we're at right now, if you were not in the flood zone before, you're probably not in it now. And I think it's also important to point out that this appeal can't just be that I don't like it. They said it has to be based on, you have to bring scientific proof to the table.
That's correct.
And, I was in the initial meeting with you before the one at 4, and, we were just presented with this map. They didn't say, do you like this map? They said, here's the map. And I'm not willing to hire any consultants to try to fight 4 or 5 PhDs that do this for a living, and they've done this study for 6 years. I'd like to do whatever we can, of course, but I don't want to do like we did on the power plant thing and just waste money.
Well, we have some substantial issues, especially in St. Marks, where there's some obvious, we believe are obvious errors, and that we're going to be presenting to them.
You know my point, though. I don't want to go hire it.
No. This is just everyday people would understand that that's not right.
Okay. And yeah, we definitely need to catch up.
That's right, because that's a big one. So
yeah.
But I think we ought to take a proactive stance as a board, and I know we're going to hopefully talk about this later. But I wanted to ask Louis a couple questions, rhetorical questions, but so the public understands. It took 6 years to do this process for the government, the federal government, to do this. Is that right?
That's correct. It was a 6-year process.
During that 6-year process, how how much input did we have into the process?
Oh, we didn't get the maps until May of this year.
Okay. The point I'm trying to make, folks, is that it's critical that you understand that this is something from big government being shoved down our throats as usual, and we got to accept it. The big issue is all the public and everybody out there listening in TV land needs to take heed to what Louis telling us. And I try to go online and generate some interest in. Don't sit back and assume that everything's okay. It's not. You need to, and I'm not being an alarmist, I'm just telling you, you need to go online to this website that Louis just suggested you go to, and it's www.nwfwmd.state. I'm hoping the Wakulla News will do a good job of publishing this, .fl.us. And you can, it's simple to do. You look up your address and you'll know real quick where you stand with the new flood regulations, with the new flood zones. Many have changed. Contrary, Randy, the area over in St. Mark's pushed well inland.
Yeah, that's right, because it went up the river.
And there's a big impact all along the coast. What people need to understand is that base flood elevation has increased, which now means that your home, even though it's grandfathered in most instances, that now has changed the whole game plan. And you may now, your house may have been built above the floodplain before, but may now be in fact below the floodplain. This is a big deal, guys, and it's going to impact our county in the way that the property appraiser will assess property values. It will change everything. And understand that if you try to sell your house, it's going to change the value of your home, and you may very well now get a notice from your mortgage company that you're going to be required to have flood insurance. To me, that's a big deal, and I think most folks out there in the community don't understand the significant impact, and you really need to check. It doesn't matter if you live on the coast or not, you still need to check, because in many places it has moved north of Highway 98. So if you're close to that corridor, in that corridor on the other north of 98, you need to check. Louis trying to tell you, and not being an alarmist again, to check. You need to ascertain what your property, what's changed, because if you don't, the first notice you're going to get is probably from your insurance company or your mortgage company, and you're not going to have any say then. I want the board to be proactive and send something strong to FEMA asking that we get a 6-month stay, if you will.
Well, to figure out what we can do, and I think we'll talk about that under the discussion items. And I was going to, and thank you. And we may ask you back for questions. If there's citizens, and I know I have several citizens here who want to talk about this tonight, make sure that you fill out a card to speak at Citizens to be Heard. We will hear that right before we get to Commissioner discussion items, and I anticipate this being an item that's discussed early on at discussion items this evening, but there won't be an opportunity for you to interact during Commissioner discussion
Can we put
items.
the link on the county's website, too, in case somebody didn't write it down?
Yeah, we're going to work on getting a lot of that information out there. There's a lot of information that you can contact. You can get insurance information as well. So,
And I'm pretty sure it's already on our website.
A good thing, but they did say that if you have flood insurance now, your policy is good on that property. It goes with the property. In other words, if you sell it, that flood insurance stays with it, and it shouldn't go up. But if you wait and don't research it, and it turns out you go from a non-flood zone to a flood zone, and you don't buy it before it changes, you may be paying $4,000 a year for flood insurance.
Also, you can't lapse. You can't let your flood insurance lapse, because then it goes up to the highest level, as well as realize the year over year the exemption is granted year over year by Congress. Now, they've granted it every year for the exemption to allow folks that are where the flood zone has changed. Understanding that's been granted year over year, but there's that outside possibility one year that might not happen, but that's just...
I guess the point is...
I just wanted to bring that up so everybody understands that.
If you're not in a flood zone now, like my house is not in a flood zone, flood insurance for me is very cheap. But if the FEMA map changed and it became in the flood zone, then you'd have to have it because your mortgage company, and it'd be very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that the thing is to
And we're going to discuss this more during discussion items. Thank you, Louis, and we'll move forward.
Thank you,
There'll be
Louis.
opportunity then. Thank you all. It's important that we get this message out there and spread the word, and we'll talk about them, but we're going to do our best to try and limit the impact as much as we can and to make sure that people have the opportunity to limit the impact for themselves. Moving forward with our agenda, up next on the agenda is the consent agenda. We've pulled items 9 and 10. Are there any?
To approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Item number 9 this evening is request board approval of the Workforce Plus Strategic and Operating Plan for the 2012-26 timeframe.
Yes, I ask that this be pulled just because I try hard to read things carefully, and there are a lot of errors in this, and I don't think we should approve this to go forward to the legislature right now. And rather than try to make the corrections now, I guess I would move that we table it and send it back to Workforce Plus.
Kim,
And I,
representative here from Workforce, would you like to have her come forward?
well, let me point out some of the errors, and then the beginning. Let's see. It has the executive summary, and then it's asked to describe the characteristics of the local area's population, and then it has a section on Leon County, has a section on Gadsden, and it has a section on Wakulla. And each of those sections has an introductory statement that usually includes population, and then at the end it also includes population, and usually they don't match. They aren't. Usually the initial one is not up to date. So, but that was minor. I probably wouldn't have stopped it for that. It's just kind of sloppy. But where it really got problematic is when you looked at current employment statistics. And if you look at current employment statistics for Wakulla County,
What page are you on, Ms. Art?
okay, I'm scrolling to it and I'll tell you.
166 of them.
9
know,
166
9?
of 166.
Okay, yes, this is page 9. Current employment by industry for Wakulla County, Florida on July 2012. Total non-agricultural employment, 7,331,400 people. We don't have that many people in our county, not close. Anyway, that same number, and that whole paragraph, all of it is not Wakulla County workforce current employment statistics. And if you compare that, I think it's a cut and paste problem, because those same numbers appear for Gadsden County, for Leon County, and then also later for District 5. So, there are other places where they've said that statistics for Wakulla are not available, so they insert the Florida statistics, but they you know what you're reading. Here, it's clearly incorrect to say that we're employing 7,330,000, and it's, we have 154,500 real estate rental and leasing people. Anyway, it's just somebody needs to go through it and make sure it's accurate.
Or just that one where it looks like they listed Florida's numbers and didn't specify that they weren't Florida's numbers.
Well, that whole executive summary, that whole first section has a number of errors. I just pointed out a couple, and I'm happy to sit down. I didn't read this till today, so I didn't have a chance to talk to anybody at Workforce Plus to pull it or whatever. But, once I got through that section, then I pretty much just started skimming.
Well, yeah, and it's clear that in most of the places we're talking about those large numbers, they're talking about Florida, but you're right, they did not specify those were Florida numbers. I don't know if Kimberly would like to come up. The CEO from Workforce Plus is here with us this evening. I don't know what the timeline is for this report.
It's October 1.
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners, Chair. The error that you pointed out, I appreciate your comments and certainly your diligence in reviewing the document. I will tell you that this was a statewide issue. The source data that every workforce board uses is the Florida Department of its labor market statistics. Unfortunately, there was an error in the data, so despite it inputting the county of choice, Gadsden, Leon, Wakulla, Wakulla, what it pulled out was the Florida-specific numbers. This was noted by their head and chief labor market statistician just as early as Sunday. You should have received communication, each county should have received communication today as soon as we found out that there was an error statewide, and they were making sure that every workforce board knew just that. They're calling it a system error in that, again, despite the fact of selecting a county, it is still pulling up Florida-specific data. As far as when you refer to a cut and paste, please understand that the data that you'll see in any given plan, it will refer to the metropolitan statistical area. So regardless of once the data is reduced down and refined down to the county, as you're referring to, it will still have that same data for Gadsden, Leon, Wakulla, and Jefferson, because we're looking at an MSA versus county specific.
Okay, well, clearly you've already identified this error. I don't think it should have come to us to approve as is. So I would like to, we either need to table it and have it come back in a corrected version, or have some agreement that we're going to, that you'll correct all the errors or whatever and submit it. I don't know.
Well, and if she has to, it looks to me on here that she has to return this paperwork in by October 1st, and I don't know what the ramifications are for not turning it in by October 1st, but we don't have time to approve it.
Let's just pass it with, she knows what's wrong.
That the statistical data, because again, the other content in terms of programmatic information, that is not what's at question. It's the statistical data that was pulled from the system that everybody uses as their source data. That's what's required. I would offer as an alternative providing that specific data with the understanding that we will provide the source data, the link, so that you can compare it and ensure that what you're getting is not false data, but truly the data that's coming from the system that they've corrected.
Do we have a motion?
So move what I just said.
To pass it with the updates?
Pass it and correct the statistical errors.
Okay.
Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda this evening is item number 10, the amended and restated fund balance policy and repeal.
Yes.
Request for approval of the amend and restate the fund balance policy and approve the proposed resolution repealing the House Prisoner Jail Bed Rainy Day Fund.
So moved.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. We had to make a change to this, so we couldn't leave it on the consent agenda. Any further discussion?
Yes. I wanted to first just note that the resolution correctly states that it's, let me see, that I'm looking for the fund balance deficits. Okay. In the resolution, it correctly states that it will be that if there's a fund balance deficiency, that there will be a plan to achieve the target over a period not to exceed 5 years. In the item, it says no less than 5 years, but which is not accurate. But it's more important that it's correct in the policy. But I also wanted to know, because I was talking to Tim, and I just wanted to raise the issue with Sheriff Crum, if he's still here. Okay. The fund balances are set usually at 25% of the operating expenses. But in the case of the fines and forfeitures fund, that in order to meet the fund balance requirement, you'll not only have to have 25% of the sheriff's operating budget, but you'll also have to have 2 years' worth of net jail bed revenues, which is like $3.4 million, I think. Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, you're going to have that much money in your fund balance or you have to have a plan to get that much within 5 years. And so one of my questions is, what is the current fund balance and how much needs to be made up to achieve that requirement, and can you do that in 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's, the numbers are numbers that everybody kind of put together. It's projections more than anything, and it's so that if the federal inmate situation becomes a negative, then we'll be able to afford to get ourselves out of it. If we make that in 5 years, that would be extremely good.
Well, but this is saying you got 5 years to do it.
That's something we got to look at. Currently, we would hit it a little past that, but we would be getting close within 5 years. But that's probably something, if need be, we probably need to amend this at either make an amendment to accept out for the sheriff's office. The reason being is we're not really sure. Is we got to end this year to really see where that projects out, and based on where we end. So, but I mean, we can leave it in there and we can amend it. But there's a good possibility they may hit it, but it's going to be. That is a question. We batted that around. Did we change the fund balance policy? We made this exception. So that's kind of where we're at.
I think these are living documents. I mean, we're going to sign them, and they're going to continue to move forward.
Right.
And
try and make sure that everything works the way we're planning on them.
That's right.
There's variables there that no one can control.
Right.
The clerk's office, your staff are just out of our control. So it's an ideal situation if it actually occurs that way. If we can generate that within 5 years, then we're kind of off the. If it happens, we'll be okay.
Yeah, we're in fact we're running a 10-year program on that now to figure out exactly. We're putting a lot of variables into all these budgets, and we're going to come back after we end the year. We're going to come back and put in all of our forwards in November, all of our what we ended up the year, and then we'll be able to solidify this for sure is exactly when we'll be, or within a very educated guess when we'll be at fund balance. But right now we're looking at 5 or 6 years is kind of where we're looking at. We're based on our initial projections.
Yeah, everything stays status quo.
That's right.
And we've got increase in the jail bed revenues, and everything stays good, but it's out of everyone's control if it trash.
Right.
Right. We have a policy that says you're going to have a plan to have that much money in your fund balance in 5 years. And I'm just making sure that it's doable, or that you all are comfortable with having that policy. So
it's a goal. I think we should say it's a goal.
James, Greg, did you want to say something? Were you?
Thank you, Sheriff.
While he's walking up here, I just wanted to make one note. Attachment 3 to this item is actually an attachment to the fund balance policy itself, not an attachment to the resolution. So when you're approving the fund balance policy, the attachment 3, which defines the parameters of the fine and forfeiture fund, should be considered a part of that policy.
Recognizing Greg James, representing the clerk of the court's office.
Sheriff Crum is exactly correct. This is a goal. This is a generic policy that is mainly intended to, once we get to fund balance and you go below it, there needs to be a plan. This is the first time we're establishing, or just recently established, and there are several funds that are not where they need to be. And there's typically a plan to get there within 5 years. This fund and the solid waste fund are two extraordinary funds that we may not get there in 5 years. But if we set the goal high and just miss it, then we'll still be fine.
I think the
main intent is just to have a target and shoot for it. And if it takes 7 years, then we'll still all be better off in the end than not setting it. Or you could make an exception for this fund, but I don't know that it's necessary.
One of the main goals was to prevent deficit spending from future boards.
Exactly.
So as a Board of County Commissioners 5-10 years from now couldn't say, we're going to spend up all the reserves, then we'd be right back in the spot we're just getting out of now. That was the main reason.
I understand, and I think it's a good idea. I just, to set a policy that one of our departments can't do just doesn't seem right. So
it's intended to cover all your funds.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Any further conversation? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. This evening we have one general business item. County Administrator?
Yes. Let me see. Yes, this item is that we'd like to request approval to apply for a Department of Environmental DEP Recreational Trails Program RTP grant for the OBBT trailhead and bike trail amenities. This program was introduced to us last week in a meeting that we had with DEP. It just came out. There'll be there's two tranches that we'll be able to apply for at this point in time. Then there'll be a third tranche that'll be coming out in the spring of next year. That'll be about a $200,000 grant. These are both $75,000 grants. What we want to do is there may be some matching that may come with it, but we're not sure. The DEP is still refining their rules on this. But what this would be is we would like to have the ability to at least go ahead and apply for these grants so we can research out the funding. These grants would cover such things as trailheads and extensions of existing trails that we may have within our own park system that can't necessarily go along right-of-ways. So what we thought about is it's a good program for us to get in the door with. So we'd like to have approval to at least to apply for this and go through the process so that we would love to get in this cycle because these grants would be coming up from here on, and we'd like to be able to get in the cycle to be able to be getting these grants in the future.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
We don't qualify for a waiver of the match? This is not one that we're eligible for that?
DEP was uncertain of that because we're RACIC. They were uncertain as that, is my understanding in the meeting.
Right. What we have to do is because the administrative code doesn't necessarily give us an exemption, we have to do a letter requesting the waiver, and then they'll take it under consideration.
Okay. All right. And then for a county administrator, I know you would ask us to review some, like a proposal for the kind of shelters and seating and bike racks and whatever. Has that come further than what was sent around to review?
We will have more than likely on the October 1st meeting. That's when we'll have those. We'll have some ideas out there. We'll throw our project book. We're going to give you our project book, and that will have some of that information in there.
Okay. It sounds like a wonderful idea, and I'm glad to see us applying for grant funding.
Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Just an update, just to make sure everyone knows where we're on the agenda. I usually try and say this before we start general business consent items. The citizens to be heard, I stated earlier, I just want to touch on it. After we go through the commissioner items coming up, we'll then hear the citizens to be heard, then we'll have discussion. So make sure you have your citizens to be heard in, since I think that will happen before 6:30, the time citizens to be heard is normally scheduled. This evening we have one commissioner item. I have brought it up, and mainly it's an update and with some solutions that we might be able to do to offer help regarding the update on the fishery disaster and the declaration that was made by Franklin County. I wanted to call Gail Campbell up, Ronald Fred Crum, and the people that come with them to see if they have any comments that they'd like to make to speak out on this item. Each of you commissioners had the chance to see it. Franklin County declared, as asked the governor to declare them an emergency because the Apalachicola River is not having enough water. So they aren't getting enough fresh water into the Apalachicola Bay. So they've declared an emergency. We're having an issue in our bay, it's my understanding, where we have too much fresh water, so our oysters aren't getting enough fresh water. Or we have too much salt water because of the flooding we had earlier. And our different types of oysters are causing problems, so we're having the exact opposite problem, still having the same impact of reduce in yield, and it's causing some problems. One of the things that's been asked that we try and do is help educate our community on how to reach out to the oystermen and oysterwomen, the people gathering oysters, oyster harvesters, and make sure they understand the best practices for harvesting oysters, and also to try and get ourselves included with the disaster relief that may be coming to Franklin County.
Want to make a motion and we'll get it rolling?
I move that we direct staff to submit letters of support to the governor's office regarding Wakulla waters being added to the disaster declaration and direct staff to establish an informal committee to lay out long-term solutions to these issues.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Gail, and could you sort of talk to us about some of the challenges you're seeing?
Well, it came to my attention. I am a fish out of water on this issue. Trust me, the experts are in the room. But I was reached because the coalition has become the central place where folks call when they're in crisis, and received calls and emails to include the fact that the coalition, my counterpart in Franklin County, used our coalition as sort of the body to reach to for emergency help. And so my involvement has been, it's a crisis of hunger and a need to pay for utility assistance, and we are meeting with Catholic Charities on Wednesday to learn more about how Franklin is managing this issue. But it's not, that's a short-term Band-Aid fix. This is a big old problem, and so it was suggested by the county staff that we reach experts on this to begin a dialogue on what are the intermediate and the longer-term steps. So just know that the coalition is looking at what can we do immediately for the families affected by this who find work and are not finding work right now in Franklin County to put food on the table and pay their utility bills. So that's my involvement.
And Ronald Fred? Correct whatever I said that may be wrong about the oystering process, and help tell us what other things we need to make sure people are aware of in our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity that, we learned from the BP disaster, and you can take a disaster and create a disaster. If we over-help the people, they quit work. And from that work, you lose the infrastructure. And that's what happened with BP. They took the money, and most of the businesses that bought the product, and then they had markets around the country, and they lost those markets. And, we're gradually building this thing back. So, yes, we need to help people, and yes, we have a problem. And the oysters can't acclimate. It don't matter if it's fresh or if you have a severe drop or rise or whatever, and we knew this was going to happen when 32 inches of rain hit. The thing that I'm concerned with that I would like to ask, and the county administrator and Chairman Brock come down, and I'm concerned because we do have some jobs here. We have some people that education levels that's a good job for them. Prices today are $30 a bushel to the oysterman. Last year was $18 and $20, $45 a bushel retail, over $100 for a gallon of oysters. And so this brings a lot of money into the county, and I got a business, and I enjoy that money when they have jobs and they actually have earned income. If we subsidize them, they quit work. They want to pay a light bill, a phone bill, whatever, but it really don't build the entire economy. The thing that I'm warning about is if the disaster helps the harvester too much and it won't help the fish house, we lose the markets. This thing can be pushed out there for 3 or 4 or 5 years. The other thing is I have a lot of the oystermen gas up with me in the mornings, and I talk to them. And I want to know really what's the effect. I do know that the larger oyster died off. Now why, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But what we have today, because of the $30, we're talking about a 50% increase in price, is sort of a gold rush on your future survival. And this is the things that I say we have to put together a package. Now, today, from Panama City all the way down, University of Florida have been calling, wanting to put together a task force to try to resolve the problem rather than create another problem with the money. And, if we allow the oystermen to go out there today and harvest the law is 90% over 3 inch, and they have 10% under. Well, it's hard now, and for $30, they'll get the smaller oyster, but that's your future. So then the seed stock are gone, and that will prolong the problem. So do you have enough money, or somebody have enough money to keep supplementing these people for years? I think there's a plan if we work through this, and
and I can tell you they're hard to work with. I mean, they're good people and a necessity, but they get very angry with change. But, you know, BP put a lot of money in here. I saw a lot of money come in here, and it just didn't last. You know, education's got to be part of it. But I think that if we bring the people in this county together, and Franklin County now appears to get into the same issue, where we come up with a solution. We're going to have to help them, but we don't want to destroy the industry with the help, and we want to give them a hand up, not a handout. Now, the oyster relay, properly done, is a good issue, and they can work for it. You know, what we need to do in Wakulla County is assess what resource we got out there and where we can put it and where it will grow. And I'd say we've put a plan together, colorful, just like that, where we know how that we give the people the hand up rather than the hand out, and then shorten this time of disaster. If today, if they continue to go out and harvest, you know, the seed stock, this disaster's not going to get over with. And it is pretty tough. But I'm not telling you I have any solutions, but I do love these people. I do need them. I need their job. I mean, I need them to have jobs. And if we affect the system, we prolong the disaster, and that's my warning. And I don't have a lot of answers, but I do have 44 years of experience back when we depended on seafood. And it is a valuable resource, and we can make it happen.
Okay. Thanks. I also have a card from Richard Van Munster. I don't know if did you want to speak also? If you could come up. One of the things that we're going to be doing, I think this informal committee, and it's not an official advisory committee because we're just trying to help establish something, but we don't want a lot of the people who will be doing this serve on several committees and trying to work within, making it work where it doesn't cause any conflicts. So we're trying to get together so we can try and find solutions without having to...
I got a comment after this as well.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Richard Van Munster, Panacea. I've been a fisherman all my life, and the disaster to all the fishing community started in 1977 when a group of wealthy oil men started the Gulf Coast Conservation Association, and it was their goal to destroy the commercial fishing industry wherever they could, and they succeeded in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. They ain't got Alabama yet. They got Florida, they got Georgia, they got South Carolina. And what's happened is, and when the net limitation came, and those people came to Florida, and this is funded by oil people. 3 billionaires, if you follow the money trail, Exxon, Mobil, BP, that's who started it in 1977. And what they've done is they've obliterated what they don't want. And I sat on that boat during that oyster relay 2 years. Well, I've sat twice out there as a representative of the Wakulla Fishermen's Association and listened to the PhD sitting there. I got to go walk to the back of the boat to keep chucking them suckers overboard. I mean, they ain't got a clue. But what's happened is when you take all the fishing away, everybody goes to one thing. And you listen to the fishermen, there's oyster people that would never be oystering if they could snapper fish, grouper fish, mullet fish, anything. But there's nothing left. And there's nothing left because it's special interest and their big money. I come from Palm Beach County. We battle them suckers every year. You know, I can walk those docks at the Sailfish Marina. Alfred's been there. And here's this row of $10 million boats I used to get my fuel. And you could hear them talking. Well, we didn't catch a kingfish today. I guess them stinking nets got them all. Well, I'm bait fishing. Catching bait. Sardines, red herring, ballyhoo, purse seining. And pretty soon, you'd hear something from our legislature or something from the Old Marine Fisheries Commission, and there'd be some rule come out trying to stop this or that. And these powerful people have got a lot of money, and they're killing these coastal communities. And you know, fishing is recession-proof. It's recession-proof. You're talking about Wakulla Springs in 1933 during the Depression. Hey, there wasn't no fishing families hurting around here in 1933, for crying out loud. They probably, they weren't rich, but they had a job. They had plenty to eat. The house was probably paid for. We didn't worry about flood insurance. Flood insurance, the house fell down, they built another one. But the disaster is special interest in this mess, because they've made it a mess, almost an uncurable mess.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. I think one of the things, and I'll pass over to David in a second, because he's asked to make a comment. One of the things you're going to see come out of the Restore Act money, which this one's actually is research on our fisheries. There's 5% of the funding is put towards that. And one of the things, and the people, Congressman Sutherland, Senator Bill Nelson, both have fought very hard to try and have a better understanding, because they know the fishermen are saying one thing and other things are happening, and they want to get his studies done to make things work, so they can have the numbers to back things up, so they can come up with a better solution. So I think you may see some solutions coming out of that. Hearing Mr. David Edwards.
One of the things that and after talking to Ronald Fred and also a couple of, made some phone calls and met with some other folks as well, is the Department of Agriculture. I think if we can work with as a group along with Franklin County through the Department of Agriculture, possibly put together a plan, kind of as Ronald Fred was speaking of, is would be able to the first aspect of this is to survey our waters to figure out what exactly we got, what is our stock looking like. And the idea is to employ as many of the oystermen through Department of Agriculture dollars to go out and do that research for our resource. And then hopefully what would happen is that would employ them for a period of time, and then with the Restore Act dollars and hopefully with the Department of Agriculture work with our oyster relay program that identifies where those beds need to be, that will in the future allow us to allow the stock to grow at a sustainable rate. So that's kind of what I've made some conversation, talked to a couple of folks about that, and we want to kind of pursue that as a source to kind of, maybe we can help with this problem a little bit. We don't have the money to invest in it, but the Department of Agriculture definitely does, and they're active in this. So I think with Ronald Fred's assistance and some other folks in this area as well, as we'll reach out to Franklin County, and if that's good news if the University of Florida is getting involved in it as well. So hopefully, but we are active in this, and we want to see a sustainable program,
long-term solutions,
not just a short. What can we do long-term to sustain our oyster stock?
Okay. Any further comments from our board?
Basically, when you're talking about sustainability, Ronald Fred will tell you trying to sustain something with state funds is almost an impossibility. We've got to set up some sort of fund that will have an ongoing yield that we can use.
That's the whole purpose for
this program, because Ronald Fred will tell you can't. Those state funds come and go, and they're just crazy. You can't do it.
Okay.
Go ahead, skip it outside.
All in favor? Okay. Any further discussion? I appreciate it. I appreciate the people came out to speak tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward with this letter, and then we'll try and see what we can do. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Katie just stepped away. We're going to now hear from citizens to be heard as soon as Katie comes back.
That's the wrong time.
There you go.
That's flood.
Yeah, these are.
That's citizens to be heard.
Yeah. We're going to, first up under citizens to be heard this evening is Mr. Bob Danzy, to be followed by Mr. Ralph Thomas. Under discussion item. So next.
Thank you for letting me speak on this. I would encourage you all to do what Commissioner Stewart had asked, and ask for some time on this. I looked at the maps, and Ralph will be behind me, and he's got an example that'll just blow your mind. But my example will just be Wakulla Gardens. There's a lot of places like this, but there's places out there to where there's going to be flood zone that wasn't flood zone, and those people are having a hard enough time paying for their house as it is. And the foreclosures, as a real estate business owner, that's turned into basically my market, and it's very sad. I need the business, but it's not the kind I want, and I'm afraid that this maps will generate even more of the foreclosure business, because there's going to be people they didn't buy with the intent of ever paying flood insurance, and it's apparently not going to be cheap. And so it's really pretty significant of a change. I mean, it's something to be concerned with. So I appreciate everything you all do, or do everything you can do to give us some time to look through this and maybe find some help for people that are fixing to get it pretty tough. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ralph Thomas to be followed by Mr. Clay Kirsten. I'm not going to quit using titles.
Ralph Thomas, 637 Hunters Trace. I want to thank you for this, and thank you for the meeting last week. I'll say, first of all, the folks last week were very informative, very friendly, and surprisingly very patient, because they're delivering a lot of bad news, and so I do commend them for that. This is a major map revision, as we all know, and there's a lot of areas that are going to be greatly impacted by this, including my own property. My property is currently in Zone X, as well as my entire neighborhood is, and when I built my house 10 years ago, I was several miles away from any flood zone, so I had no reason to question whether or not I needed any vertical build on my house and being above a base flood elevation. My surveyor assures me that this is a major change to the base flood elevation. When I got this information, it may have been money wasted to jump in so prematurely, but I went ahead and had an elevation certificate done on my house. Went ahead and visited a couple of insurance agents to make sure that I understood this, and of course met with the folks last week. I've had flood insurance for several years, even though I'm not in a flood zone. It cost me about $300 a year. If I was to get flood insurance under the proposed map, initially I was going to be about $9,500. Now we're down to about $4,500, which is still a major hit. A lot of folks, a $25 a month increase in their payments is going to mean the difference of saving their house or not in today's economy when we've got a decrease in jobs. I am aware, and I'm like Commissioner Stewart said, not trying to be alarmist either, and I am aware that there is the grandfathering provision in place right now, and so that takes a little bit of the edge off it initially on homes that are already built. I think it's going to force a lot of people to buy insurance now just so they can protect the fact that they can get the grandfathering, when they might not have done otherwise. Mr. Edwards spoke to the fact that that could go away, and that's constantly in front of Congress whether or not they will continue the grandfathering. So the main point I want to get out of this is we need to make sure the data is correct. I think this is an example of software modeling that is now making decisions for us. And I know a lot of it's based on data, and I've got a scientific background myself, engineering background, and I understand that we've got to learn to trust that data, but we've also got to second guess it. We've got to make sure it's accurate, first of all. You had a desk set over here where folks can do an appeal, but functionally, that desk didn't even need to be there, because it would take the average person probably $50,000 to do a personal appeal. And so, when you tell me I can appeal this, but I can't physically do that, then there's no appeal process. So we need to be very careful that this is a problem that's imposed by government, and citizens would not be able to protect themselves as a result of this. So we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure the data is correct, and make sure that the grandfathering is not lulling us into this, because at any point when the grandfathering goes away, I asked the lady personally very pointed questions. It will decimate our economy at that point. Values will go down. We will not be selling homes, and ad valorem tax revenue will be going down. So move forward slowly.
Thank you. Clay to be followed by Doug Kirtley.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Clay Kirsteiner from Ocklawackee Pay. First, I'd like to thank you for all the efforts that you do on behalf of all the citizens of Wakulla County, as well as the staff. And there are a lot of people in this county that are very unsung heroes that are doing things for their neighbors on a day in and day out basis that no one pays attention to, and thank you all. I'd like to comment this evening on the recent FEMA map update that's being thrust upon everybody here in Wakulla County. I won't pussyfoot around it the way that Mr. Stewart is. The fact is that every person in this county is going to be impacted by that, whether you're in a flood zone or not in a flood zone. When the values of the properties in the flood zone, of which there are thousands, when those values go down, guess where that revenue has to come from? Everybody else in the county. The ad valorem taxes that operate our county have to be generated, and it will be spread throughout the county. There's not an individual taxpayer in this county that will not be adversely impacted by this flood zone. Through the dramatic increase of the designated flood areas, as well as the increase in levels that they're proposing or they're thrusting upon us, it's going to result in the loss of value of a lot of properties in the county. There's an appropriate mention of the grandfather clause. The insurance lady that was here the other day ballyhooed that as something great. And as Mr. Edwards points out, that's not a given. And it's not a grandfathering of the current rate. It's a grandfathering of the current rate base. So prices of insurance go up, they go right on up with you. And there's no guarantee that that's going to continue. Additionally, a brand newly constructed home in Wakulla County, built under every single rule today, I own one. By raising the rate, raising the level, the flood level, our property is no longer going to be a compliant property. If we have a loss, to do nothing with flood, if we have a fire and a substantial loss, we can't even rebuild. We have to tear our house down or come up with another way of elevating our house an additional 2 feet, despite the fact that it's built under today's current rules. And why is that? Because FEMA's come in and said, okay, there isn't a soul alive on the earth today that can validate these numbers, but we think that the elevation is going to go up 2 feet, and so now you're going to have to comply with these new rules. I would encourage the Commission to be very proactive in this issue. I know that you have a lot on your plate, but the fact is that this is something that is a very dramatic impact upon everybody in Wakulla County. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Doug Kirtley, to be followed by Chris Russell. Doug Kirtley, following up from the last meeting on the division of Lot 23 Hartsfield survey. Since the last meeting, I contacted the head of P&Z in Franklin County, Mark Carrington, and Bill Tellison in Jefferson County. Gave them the whole scenario about, the way it's zoned, 5-acre pieces, R1 agriculture. Gave them the history of the lot. A piece was cut out back in the 90s before I bought it. I gave them the whole scenario, very comprehensive. They got a good view, long conversation with them. And basically what it boiled down to was if I was in their counties, there would be no obstacles. I'd be able to just take 5 acres out of that property, regardless of any state statutes that may exist. And so after talking to them, I thought I'd come up here and revisit this with you guys. I got some good feedback from Mr. Stewart and Randy Merritt, very positive feedback. I hadn't had time to really talk to the rest of the board, but I think there's a way around this. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I do have time to work on it, and I don't really have the resources, to make a subdivision out of my 17 acres, and I don't want to make a subdivision. I just want to cut 5 out of it, which I think I should be able to do. So what I like to do is maybe write a letter again and try and get up to the rest of you guys and see if I'll present what I was given by the county attorney and get with you guys and see if there's a way we can fix this. I think there's a deficiency in the system, and I think it can be resolved. I realize it's a small issue, but it's kind of big for me, so I'm going to try to follow through with this and see if there's any way we can, fix this discrepancy in the system, because apparently this counties adjacent don't really have any problem. They wouldn't have a problem with allowing me to do this regardless of any statutes. And so that's all I really have to say. I'll get a letter to all you guys and try to contact you again on it. So okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chris Russell, to be followed by Mr. Bill Russell.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chris Russell, 92 Pimlico. I don't think I've had this many notes since my last year in college. I'm speaking on the flood map revision. I had the pleasure of being there the other day with your staff when we met with FEMA as a P&Z appointee, but I'm speaking to you as a citizen tonight. First of all, let me say I think you have the greatest staff that there is in planning I've ever seen. They do a great job. There's a lot of problems with the models they have. It's bad data in leads bad data out, right? You all went to college. You all had the classes. It was an overview they gave us the other day. There's not enough data for us to make an informed decision at this point. as Commissioner Stewart said, they were trying to thrust this down our throat. We need to stop. We need to hesitate. We need to be forceful and stop this process right now. My first question to them was, are we at a negotiating point with you right now as we move forward? And they said, oh, yeah. But then we find out later they've already sent it to the Code of Federal Regulations to be published. Well, once it's published, there goes the clock starting. So you need to be post-haste on getting your letter, and I would recommend maybe getting Congressman Sutherland's office involved as well. Let me point out a couple things right quick. And Mr. Stone, I really hope you're going to write a great article on this. This could really affect, it is going to affect our citizens in this county. We're using hurricane models, as Clay said. Correct me if I'm wrong, do you remember Hurricane Isaac the other day? You know, it's over here, it's over there, it's over here, it's over there. The same type models. It's across the board to make decisions here in our county. We need to look at that. They didn't have the transects available for us to look at. They didn't incorporate the LOMAs that have already been done. A lot of errors, a lot of basic errors that shouldn't have been in this report. As Commissioner Stewart said, rightfully pointed out, they've been doing this for 6 years. 6 years, and all we're asking for is 6 months to hold up. Commissioner Mayor, I do disagree, no offense. I know we're friends for a long time, but I do think we need to put a little money into this if necessary. I would propose maybe an ad hoc committee come together as volunteers first, but we need to really look at this. FEMA's own publication number 265 states that the local official can use his knowledge in setting the flood elevation higher than the standard rates. Well, if that same local official can do that, raising it, why can't they do it lowering it? Donnie Sparkman would know, as well as anyone, what's going on in this county with flood elevations. That's their own doctrine. They used approximate methods. They didn't include the recent rain events we had. Just a lot of stuff going in here that just didn't make sense. The biggest problem I really see, besides that economic devastation, is once it goes in effect, you have to fight it to get back out of it. Now, I fought it back in 2001 when I lived in Claremont, and they did this ridiculously same thing. It cost me $800. I had 2 small kids, a wife that worked part-time, $800. You know what that meant to me back then? And I was an educated man with a good job. This thing really needs to be stopped, and we need to move forward. If there's anything I can do, please don't hesitate to call on me, but I hope you'll move forward quickly to stop this so we can look at the data first.
Thank you. Last speaker this evening, Mr. Bill Russell.
Commissioners, I know that every one of you realizes how important this is, and I agree with Commissioner Barrett about not wasting any money, but I think we need to do everything we can to try and get some time to study this and make a decision about can we come up with data that will combat this thing, because like me, I don't carry flood insurance. I live in a V-zone. I intend to live there till the day I die. But my son, if he gets ready to sell that house, he won't be able to buy flood insurance and won't be able to sell the house to anybody that needs a mortgage. This is, if it forces me and a lot of other people to buy flood insurance now, you're sending millions of dollars out of this county that don't need to be sent out of this county, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes citizens to be heard. We're now going to move on to our discussion items. Well, first up is County Administrator or County Attorney. Any discussion items this evening?
None today.
County Administrator, any discussion items this evening?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Now I'm going to, I know I've been indicated there's lots of discussion items this evening from our commissioners, and it was a light agenda, so just general discussion. Commissioner Moore wanted to ask someone to come back up to speak, so I was going to let him do that real quick before we get into the rest.
The Director of Wakulla Lodge, could I speak with you?
Yes, sir. Jeff.
You're lucky you stayed around.
I've been waiting to get my hands on you. We go over there for breakfast, or we used to go for breakfast, and we have to pay $6-8 to get in. We have breakfast. We don't mind paying for the breakfast, just don't like to have to pay the entrance. Going in and coming out, and I think you miss a lot of business for your breakfast menu and your meal menu for people having to pay to just have a meal. We don't mind paying for the meal, we just don't want to pay the entrance fee in. How can we?
From the way I see it, this has been an issue for quite a few years. It's a state issue. The state park is charging that fee. It's not Cape Leisure that I work for.
Okay.
We have fought day and night to try and get something to happen. Now that the management has changed with the state park, it's not Brian Fugate anymore, and the new gentleman, Pete Skelko is his name. I actually have been talking with him about this, and he feels very strongly about the business that we're losing based upon the fee to get in. And that's when I let you know that as of October 1st, he was going to stop the fee at 5 p.m. Usually they'd run it until 7 p.m. or dark, but he got them to give him a little leeway. But as far as dropping it for anybody that comes to eat, the state will not allow that to happen.
Used to be you got a receipt and you got a refund on the way out. They don't do that anymore?
No, sir.
Really?
They won't even.
Just tell them you're there for a county meeting and they'll let you in free. I did it the other
If
day.
you tell them you're staying, you're staying in the lodge, they'll let you in for free too. It's been brought up many times. I am still going to fight it and try to come up with some kind of solution, because I constantly get phone calls and emails saying, if you didn't have that, especially from the local residents.
Maybe the board could do a resolution that we would support changing that fee to where that if you go in to have a meal and you get your ticket stamp, when you come back out, you get your money back.
I would absolutely love that, because the business in the lodge would triple, quadruple.
You have a wonderful menu, you have wonderful food, but
we've taken a huge hit, especially with the economy.
I go along with that easy. And I was there for a county meeting, by the way. I wasn't lying.
Clarify that, right?
I would take any help that you could give.
Yeah, I'd welcome something like that on the consent agenda at the next meeting.
Good idea.
And I have another statement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moore?
One of the things we haven't talked about the flood elevation tonight, that if you have property, let's just say I'm a builder, and I'm looking for a place to build a house. If you're in a flood zone, I'm not going to build there. I'm just not going to go there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at that flood map, and everybody that's in that flood zone, they're out of luck, because I'm going to build where my customer doesn't have to buy flood insurance. Some people can pay for the flood insurance and whatever, but 90% of the people can't afford it. And the first thing you're going to find out is your builders are going to look at that flood map, and if it's in the flood zone, all of a sudden your property values, and that's for the property appraiser, those property values, they just tank. And you watch it happen, it'll happen it's happening as we speak, because if I've got to build in a flood zone, I'm just not going to build.
That's a good segue into the flood, to the FEMA maps. Commissioner Stewart, you want to talk about that? Commissioner Merritt, want to talk about that? I think I brought the people up to speak earlier during announcements. I think it's on all of our minds right now.
I like to do whatever we can. I just don't want to get any false hopes that we can battle the federal government and get them to change their mind. Now, if there's, David, you said there was a couple things that were obviously wrong.
In our opinion, yes.
Yes, we need to do whatever we can to get it revised.
Right, and we need as much information from the public where they've got some obvious, if there's elevation differences, than what they've got on their plan.
I agree with asking for the extension, too.
Right. Most definitely. I mean, it took them 6 years, and they give us, I think 6 months, 3 months to regurgitate all that information in order to try to figure it all out. Mr. Chairman, I have the floor. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't mind government looking out after me, but every time the government looks out after me, it seems like I get in more trouble. And the real issue is what Chris talked about, is the data being flawed. If I looked at their little presentation here, and no boots on the ground. It's all done with this GPS and flyovers with the plane, and there's no people on the ground looking and asking the question, and then they haven't taken into account we've had 2 500-year floods. None of that data was taken into account. I know what flooded, and I know what didn't flood, and for them to make assumptions that this is going to flood or that's going to flood without even asking those questions, it just doesn't make sense. So, and I know government don't always use common sense, so they need to reapply that rule, and we need to slow the train down. My question, I guess, to the attorney is, and I know this is putting her on the spot, and I think I may have asked you this Friday, Heather, legally, what recourse do we have going forward? Can we do anything to at least slow the train down until we can get them to look at the data?
I mean, we can certainly ask for an extension. I don't know whether they would get that or not, but then your other recourse would be to try to participate in the federal rulemaking process, which is what this will become. And there are opportunities for you to provide comments, and that under the Federal Administrative Procedures Act.
Okay, how do we go forward with that?
We'd have to, I'd have to get with Louie and figure out where they are in the process. You basically have to watch for when they take certain actions, and you then have to react within a certain period of time. It depends on what the action is. As I understand it, it's 90 days from when they start publishing the rules.
It's 90 days after, they're going to publish it in the Code of Federal Regulations and then publish it in a local newspaper, and it's 90 days after the local ad.
All right.
So that's your comment period, and you're allowed to then make comments. Now, whether they take those into consideration or just ignore them, that's...
Well, I know when I'm hearing that what happened to Leon County, they came in, did the presentation, 90 days passed, and all of a sudden here you are, here's your flood areas, and they did nothing, and a lot of people got hosed over with the new boundaries and elevations, and it applies more so to us because we're a coastal county. And
I think one of the things we should do, I think we should send a letter not only to FEMA, but I think we should also be reaching out to Congressman Sutherland.
I agree.
Partnering with Franklin County, because they're having the same maps redone, so we get more of a regional impact.
There's 3 or 4 counties that are having that, are they not?
Partner with all the counties. I think it's affecting all of us. And I think, the fact they're talking about lifting the flood elevation in St. Mark's by, I think, 10 feet is just, I just can't imagine what that's going to do, how you have any commercial district where everybody has to be 10 feet in the air.
I think we got some...
They are now.
10 feet higher in the air than they are now.
It's actually 6 feet higher than they are now. Right now it's elevation 13. It's going to go to 19, but it puts them in a V zone. Mm-hmm. The difference between a flood zone and a V zone is you got to have breakaway walls in a V zone. You can't have any accessory structures on your property unless it's something really cheap. There's a lot of things that kick in the V zone that aren't there just because you're in an A zone.
Now, if you want to file comments or appeals on specific areas that you think are incorrect, formal appeals, you really are going to need to have some
but the county,
subject matter experts.
Wakulla County can't just say, can we file a suit, ask a judge to hold it up until the data? I'm reaching out for something extreme. I don't understand the law. I'm not a lawyer, but you do.
Sure.
What's the most extreme thing we can do?
Well, you would be in an administrative process.
It don't cost anything.
Yeah, you'd be in an administrative process first, and typically you do have to exhaust administrative remedies before you can pursue legal remedies. I'm not saying that a lawsuit isn't a possibility in the future, but generally it's more productive and less costly to try to make changes in the administrative process first.
And that makes sense. The idea of we got some smart citizens who understand this process and have done some research. If we had a committee of these folks that would be willing to help move this forward, I want to get us all the help we can get.
Yeah.
And we only got we're on a short fuse.
I think about the best you could ask for is an extension on this time period to do your study. You first got to get an extension, then you do your study.
Okay.
But, Dan, Mr. Bob, tomorrow when your customer comes to buy a home from you, first thing he's going to do is ask if that home's in a flood zone, which means everybody's home who's in a flood zone just went down in value, which means everybody else's taxes just went up in value. Well, it didn't go up in value, it just went up. But that's going to happen tomorrow. Really and truly, that's...
And I had to go this morning.
Yeah.
Well, talking about how unfair it is, we asked a question in St. Mark's about the height that they're showing on their current plan. That storm hasn't hit yet. And, you know, the last storm that really devastated St. Mark's was in 1843, I believe is what was, and they said, well, they didn't have data from then. But the whole point was, is, you know, and we made the comment at that point in time, well, you're making a decision based upon something that it happened in 1843 maybe, but it hasn't happened since then.
But we've had two 500-year floods.
And we've had two, yeah.
Recently.
Well, it's the V zone in there, and it didn't. I mean, there was a lot of what ifs, and that was installed in that model, and that's.
And I know it's storm surge data that was what they're looking at, but anyway, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I want us to move as quickly as we can to.
How do we ask for an extension? Can we not just?
I just sent an email to. I just got an email from the lady that was here with FEMA, and I just sent that.
I think we
request.
need to maybe draft 2 letters for our next meeting. One that's going to FEMA asking for them just to review the review and asking Congressman Sutherland to provide impact, and the other one to ask for the extension. I mean,
I think we could all agree on that now.
Yeah, I want to wait for the next meeting. I'm going to give you authority.
Okay.
Tonight to sign those letters and get them out of here.
It's 5-0. I don't think there's an issue.
I move that we do that.
Second.
Draft some letters to try and help make this process work smoother. Okay. Ask for an extension, ask for support from Congressman Sutherland, and ask FEMA to reevaluate this process because we are finding flaws on the ground.
We can, of course, you know, if we find obvious errors, I question them pretty hard on the scientific part of it. Chris was there with it about the transects and how'd y'all come up with this and that and the other. So we can appeal it if there's obvious errors, but I think this is a uphill, very, very uphill battle.
With you, Randy.
I agree, Randy, but we got to try.
Versus the federal government.
You could ask for an extension. Why you
I mean, we want to do whatever we can. Don't get me wrong, but
well, and I think as we work and also do and the motion can include outreach to other communities to try and partner on this effort. Is that, you're okay with that?
Yes,
absolutely.
I think the more of us do it, the better.
I think the one thing that the Restore Act's shown really well is that as you bring more communities in, the regional impact starts to be a louder voice. So I think that's going to be helpful. Any further discussions on this before we vote?
I just have a question. I was not able to attend the other meeting. I was out of town. And Lou, is there another opportunity to see that presentation or hear more about the methodology and so forth?
They haven't scheduled anything, but I can see if we can get that in a PowerPoint or something that maybe we could put a link to or have it available for a commission meeting. It's a brief PowerPoint video that talks about their methodology and how they came up with that.
I would appreciate that.
I think when Mr. Snowden puts it in the paper, that your values are going to go down and they're going to tank.
Nothing's official yet. I mean, it's also big. We're doing our best to protect the infrastructure, our community's investment.
I think Terry's point is well taken, though. If somebody's looking to buy a house, they're going to go look at that proposed flood map, and they're going to say, that house in the proposed flood, I don't want it.
That's right. And if you sell me one that's in that flood map, I'm going to come get you.
But it is what it is.
That's right.
The disappointing part is 6 years the federal government's been that's not the right word. Putting this together to hand this to us. And then, but they never presented to us. I mean, then you make a good point. They never came to the commission or ever educated the public. They have one meeting and say the 90-day window's about to start. If you don't like it, you got to complain. And like they suggested, you got to have $30,000 to fight them. Anyway, this is the federal government at its worst.
We can't blame this all on the Democrats. I just told Alan it spans both parties in the administration.
It must be Bush's fault.
Yes.
All right.
Commissioners, after this meeting, I will send you each an email that summarizes the basic process in the event we don't get an extension.
Okay.
And I'm not pussyfooting, so.
Thank you all. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you all. Commissioner Merritt, Commissioner Stewart, do you have any additional items? Commissioner Merritt has several. You may have the opportunity to speak again if there's one.
Very, very, very brief. I gave you all a copy of the impact fee thing. I told you I went over it with David, Greg, and Tim. Went over my methodology, how I arrived at these numbers, and here they are. So I told y'all I would do it, and I put a lot of thought into it and how to do it. And, this is what I feel I can go to somebody and justify, and it boils down to $549.50. And most of that, almost half, is for the library. It's nothing for transportation because I assume the ones that sales tax would offset. Future payments on the ones that sales tax would offset whatever impacts you have. County attorney and I don't agree necessarily on that point totally, but the board is allowed, the impact fee only gives you the maximum defendable number. It can be anything from 0 to that. Right now it's 0. I don't know if I want to necessarily propose to bring this up right now to set this impact fee, but I feel comfortable defending this number, and so that's that.
Are these at 100%? This would be the full?
That would be the full. In other words, transportation, just for an example, the impact fee study said it was supposed to be $1,048. I calculated a credit of $1,589. That's based on a present worth value of 27 years of future 1-cent sales tax payments at using a return rate of the inflationary rate, which is 4.3%. You can see on the impact fee credit calculation page how I got it. Now, a couple of these I made a little changes to, like, for example, on the transportation one, they assumed $1 million a mile to improve capacity. I used $500,000 a mile. I thought that was a lot more accurate. I believe that when you pave a dirt road, it increases capacity. Some others they think that, but I think that's the case. No offense, Heather.
Oh, I wasn't saying that impact fees aren't used to pave dirt roads, though. Those are local roads. They're for arterials and clusters.
Right, exactly. And if, I understand the point that if we use our 1-cent sales tax to pave a bunch of subdivision roads, that's really not increasing capacity. But I think it is. You remember when Wakulla Aaron was dirt at McDonald's, and that's grown into a major corridor. And fire rescue, for example, the study calculated a certain impact fee of $343. But if you start counting that $70 a year MSBU that house is going to pay from now to the next 27 years, and you back that out, that goes to zero. It actually goes to negative. So these are the numbers.
I hate to ask the question, but who are you going to charge this on? What are you going to charge this on?
This is the impact fee on a new construction single-family dwelling used to be, was it $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 something? The board voted to set it to zero. If we ever do bring it back, this is a number I feel.
This is the impact fees are the impact fee. You're familiar.
$549.50.
Yes, it used to be.
Impact fee does not include sewer, though.
No.
Right.
The impact fee used to be like $600-something. Then the impact fee study was gone, and there was a bunch of controversy about growth doesn't pay for itself.
This is well, thank you. We may have to, at some point in the future, have a workshop to better understand the numbers.
It took us about 30 or 40 minutes, just for me to kind of explain, because each one's different. Each impact fee stands on its own. Library, EMS, parks, blah, 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 blah.
And I understand that. So it's just having that conversation to understand, because without the accompanying information, it's hard to just look at a number and understand.
Heather has everything I worked on, right, Heather? And I guess if anybody wanted a copy and wanted to look at my stuff, you could...
Public records request.
Well, we don't need to do a public, I'm sure Heather will give you the copy.
Yeah, you could...
All right, on to the next item. Anyway, that's what I come up with. I feel comfortable with this.
I appreciate it.
Even if we're not going to adopt it,
we have numbers to look at.
Yes. Next thing, I gave you this CRTPA packet. I think maybe it's finally paying off. If you look at page 3, all right, changes from last year's TSM, which is the Transportation Systems Management. Significant change, project addition this year's blah 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 includes the addition of new projects associated with improving 5 intersections along Crawfordville Road in Wakulla County. So at least we got our 5 intersections, which is 319 and 98, 319 and Martin Luther King, 319 in Wakulla area, which is McDonald's, 319 in Ivan Church, which I think is supposed to be the Walmart, and 319 at Bloxham. And if you look at the next page attachment 1, you'll see we are ranked number 1 above anything in Tallahassee, Capitol Circle, Magnolia, or Adams Street. Our intersections are number 1 on this priority list. The next step from this priority list is the transportation 5-year work plan. So this is a major step forward. At least we're on the radar screen. Now, we had to be on that list to get funding. Now, I think we do have funding for Wakulla Area, like $600,000.
Yes, we do have funding for Wakulla Area intersection.
You know, our thinking, what we agreed to is to try to improve the intersections, which are the major clog points, maybe 4-lane them, traffic improvements, and so anyway, that's one good thing about CRTPA is we got to be on that.
We'll give you a pay raise.
Good. Good. Speaking of that, I talked to David when I was in meeting with Harry Reid with the CRTPA today. I was just kind of asking him, I said, I know there's nothing you can really do about it, but you think we can get DOT to start mowing the Crawfordville area more often? And, you know, if you look in front of Dan's old, you know, across from Winn-Dixie, you do 3 feet tall weeds, and he says, in fact, DOT, because of the wildflower program, Ms. Arts, they have saved a ton of money on mowing roads because they only mow them twice a year now instead of 5 times a year on these areas. He said, well, maybe we could approach DOT and say, well, we'd like you to take some of that money you saved in Wakulla, because you don't have to mow our roads so much, and come mow the Crawfordville area, at least, I would think, more often, because it makes it look so much nicer if the grass isn't 2 or 3 feet tall along the side of the road and in the medians. And I don't know who mowed that spot, David, after I called you about it, but
That would have been ES&G.
okay, I called them about.
Excuse me,
right there by
Cleve.
the-
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Right there by the cemetery, you know, where 61 splits off, and it was just, you know, 2 or 3 feet tall. But anyway, maybe we could do that.
The other, and I think that's a great idea. The other thing that we learned recently is that if we wanted to take over the maintenance, for example, in Crawfordville, we could get money from FDOT.
I would be
that they
interested to
would-
see what that number was. He did mention that.
Right.
If it's, we'll give you back $200, that's different. If they'll give us back $200,000, then that's a different story altogether. So, David, maybe you could...
I know the person to ask.
Last item, I'd like us personally, and this is just a thought of mine, we have a non-interference policy in our code. Heather showed it to me, where commissioners are not supposed to interfere with staff. I'd like us to actually adopt some guidelines. If I go to David, and let me just give you an example. If I go to David and he's meeting with Heather, I shouldn't be able to just walk in their meeting and just sit down just because I want to be there. You know, just basic things like that commissioners don't go to staff meetings unless they're invited to go. Commissioners, and, you know, Jerry, what you had said about us not asking staff to do a bunch of things, if I want to go to David and tell David, or tell anybody, Louis, I want to see the comparison of the last 15 years' budgets in the county, and I want you to break it all down by department, and that's going to take them hours and hours to do. I think that direction should come from the board. There's, you know, I don't know what time frame, you know, David can approve a certain amount of stuff, and if he feels it's going to be excessive, it need to come from the commission.
Well, under our current guidelines, it goes to David. We can't go and just say, Louis, Tim, we want this information. We ask David. But I know, like, normally I usually do something is copy David. Like, this is what I'm looking for. Usually it's a quick yes/no question, but copy David, and David says this is good, move forward.
I'm not saying anybody here's a problem or any problem or any future problem, but if it was
but you want
if you went into Jessica's office and says, I want you to pull all this information out, it's going to take hours of her time, that should come from board action, not one commissioner wanting this or wanting that. So anyway, I'm going to bring back an item like that if y'all...
Well, basically,
think it's a really
what
crazy
you're
idea.
saying is everything goes to David, and that's the way it should be, with the board, and David's the administrator. It
Well,
comes
I don't
from
want
us
to put all the onus on David, because if there's some 5-hour request and he turns it down, he might make me mad because he turned down. So why'd you turn down my request for all this
Board
information?
direction it could still be board direction to have staff do things.
Mm-hmm.
But that way, and the goal of this again for people who may not understand is to avoid Randy going and asking something and I go and ask the exact opposite.
Not just that, me going and being say I'm a full-time commissioner and all I want to do is sit at the commission office all day and I get bored, so I'll go mess with Louis and I'll go, hey guys, I'm really concerned about this impact fee. I want you to do this impact fee study for me. Well, the board didn't ask them to do that. I did. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you.
Okay.
Is that all right if I bring something back?
I think, work with the county attorney.
Yeah, we don't have the staff that we used to, so it takes everybody what we've got to do the people's business now. So we need to just make sure we're as streamlined and efficient as possible.
Well, yeah, and I'm a little confused because on the one hand, you're saying there's not a problem, but we should have the guidelines. I guess one of the things I would encourage is that if we're asking for information from staff, that if it's not something people can do just with 2 minutes or whatever, that people if either communicate to us or communicate to you that this is going to be 3 hours worth of work time, and
Well, kind of like last week about remember you had asked some questions about manipulating the spreadsheet. I said we can do items 1, 2, and 3, but we can't do 4 and 5 because we don't have staff for the time.
Well, that was good.
That's right.
But if it was board direction to do item 4 and 5,
That's right,
then
then
he would do it. That's my point.
That's right.
I don't think anybody's going to shut anybody down. I'm just trying to set a precedent for now and here on out. Here's some simple guidelines to, don't walk into county, staff's offices and go be nosing around, and don't be sitting in on meetings when you're not invited, and, just things that seem self-apparent but may not be.
I totally agree with you.
Okay. Look forward to seeing what's brought back.
Thank you.
And we'll just go down and we'll get to each of you in just a second, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I wanted to bring up, there's still ongoing conversation and about the community center in the community, of what's moving forward and what the next steps are, and whether it's going to be the YMCA or whether it's going to be a space that people can rent and do things. The little bit of the update, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, is right now all that's moving forward is we're building the building.
Right.
The decisions of what's going to happen in the building haven't been made yet. I had a conversation today with a citizen, and I just wanted, I think we're going to, and David, you and I have discussed this, have to have a workshop on it sometime in the future. At this point, I think it's worth scheduling that workshop probably in December, since the building's moving forward, and I'll bring up an item or something to bring back. I just wanted to get out there because I hear people are concerned. Scheduling the workshop probably in early December, so that, because right now, if we schedule the workshop, it would happen the week before the election, and I don't want to.
When do the new commissioners get signed in?
I think it's November 17th.
November 20th?
I thought it was the 17th, but maybe it's the 20th.
So November 20th. So this would let them have I'd like to have them, provide them the opportunity, since it's just moving forward a building, provide them the opportunity to be in, maybe do it in January. But the decision, I just mainly want to say the decision hasn't been made, what's happening. I know there's been discussions, one of the things, should the county have an organization that provides services, or should it be a space that people use and provide their own services? And right now I think we're just going to get a really great facility, and what happens there is still to be determined. I want to set
up a meeting actually with David, myself, and Ted Gerald. We're going to go meet with, he's the one that owns Body Tech, we're going to go meet with the YMCA guy and just have him, because he's really concerned also about, we're just going to go talk to him.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really good, a lot of very legitimate concerns. And again, and there's a difference. It took me a while to realize the difference in what I was thinking when I thought community center and what was being discussed when people said community center. Because in my world, as we've talked about before, a community center is a common space where citizens rent the space and teach lessons. And other people, community center is a place where someone's providing the county or the YMCA or some other program is providing the resources. So it's just trying to figure out what that is and where that conversation's going. But a lot of that will be determined in the future, and we might as well wait until after our board has moved forward. So I just wanted to mention that. I don't know if you all want to talk about it more now or just...
I just have a question on the RFP or the invitation to bid. Has that gone out yet?
Debbie, where are we with that?
Sorry, to come to the podium, please.
Because it's sitting on my desk. I've been working with Alan Wise, and it is sitting on my desk. We are working on getting it out.
When do you expect it to go out?
I'd shoot for, I'd say sometime in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, because one of the, okay, so if it goes out within 2 weeks, when is construction supposed to start? When would the bids be evaluated and awarded and all of that?
I imagine that bid's going to take a little while. We're probably looking at least a month, if not a little bit longer.
Because one of the questions I've been getting is whether Operation Santa could use the sanctuary if there's not going to be any renovation started before.
That's something we're going to wait and see. We've initially told them, no, that you're not going to be able to use that facility. But if it is available naturally, they can use it if something comes up and we don't. Because I know it's important, they need to be able to use it, but also we don't want to have people in danger and in the way of construction as it's going on.
No, I understand, but this just keeps getting pushed back further and further. And
well, once we get the calendar set, then, we'll bring it back to the board and let you know exactly where we're at.
And I think it's worth noting, I think last year, and I'm sure I'm volunteering Scott Joyner now, but the construction for the improvements there aren't happening anytime soon. There's still a large storage room in the back of the library that if Operation Santa needed to store anything now, they could store things in. Right now, it mainly holds old paperback books.
Right, I don't know, I mean, last time I was in there, it was pretty full.
But they just had another book. They can always hold more. Just for storage. They didn't want to do sorting in there, but we can work it out.
Okay.
Doesn't have any lights yet. But it's storage. Commissioner Moore?
Not half.
Commissioner Moore has nothing to comment this evening. Commissioner Arts?
We all got an email from the farm, and I didn't know if any of you have attended the last homeowners association meeting or has been moving forward on responding to them or whatever. No?
I think
Okay.
I saw. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Speed humps. How much stop
No,
signs?
yeah. Okay, so nobody's doing anything with that, okay.
I mean, they need to get it to the community traffic safety team, and that's what I suggested.
Okay, well, and I was asking Cleve did it go to Billy Jones, did it go to Cleve, whatever.
Yeah.
Are they wanting a four-way stop?
They're just discussing the infrastructure they want to do in their neighborhood, right?
They want some four-way stop.
They want some stops.
With the money they have in their neighborhood to pay for those things. But they're having community neighborhood
on the main road
decisions.
Yeah.
Are they talking about? Yeah, okay.
So they should, in your opinion, Mike, they should present that to the community?
I think that's the best place to start, and then let them evaluate it and make a recommendation to the board.
Okay.
They really need to get an approval of the homeowners association on what they want to do.
I agree. But I agree.
Okay.
Because I went to the meeting where they had a good turnout and they had a vote as to whether they wanted speed bumps or not, whether they wanted to pay for them or not. And the idea of some stop signs came up at that meeting. But
I'm not going to even chime in on this one.
All right. Is that all you have this evening?
yeah, I was just curious whether anybody was doing anything.
I'd be glad to entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you all. All in favor?
Thank you, Ellen.
Have a great meeting, y'all. Great night. Thank y'all.
Still daylight.
Yeah.